Ships are taking the long way around Africa. Insurance premiums spike on routes your grandparents never had to think about. Defense budgets swell while schools and hospitals fight for attention. If you look closely, the signals are everywhere. Power is shifting. The rise and fall of world powers isn't just a textbook idea. It's a living process shaping prices, politics, and the safety of your morning commute. Today, we're unpacking how great powers climb, how they stall, and why the contours of that cycle matter right now. Here's the frame. Over centuries, countries that combine productive economies, credible institutions, technological advantage, coherent alliances, and sound finances tend to rise. They pull in talent and capital. Their currencies become trusted. Their navies and supply chains set the rules of trade. But success sows its own vulnerabilities. Debts accumulate, costs rise, politics calcify, and rivals learn. Shocks, wars, financial crises, pandemics, energy disruptions accelerate the turn. The arc isn't a straight line, it's a long loop of ascent, dominance, and adjustment. Understanding where the world sits on that loop can help you read today's headlines without panic and prepare for tomorrow. Let's start with the longer view. Think of the Iberian empires that burst outward in the 1500s. Spain drew silver from the Americas and projected power across oceans, anchored by military muscle and early financial innovations. But the very flows of silver that made Spain rich also fed inflation and papered over a lack of domestic productivity. Meanwhile, a much smaller rival, the Dutch Republic, built something different. A dense trading network, joint stock companies, a tolerant commercial culture, and the most sophisticated capital market of the age. Dutch naval power protected trade routes. Dutch finance priced risk for the world. When Spain overextended, the Netherlands rose. A century later, Britain did to the Dutch what the Dutch had done to Spain, only bigger. It married coal and steam to global finance and law. The Bank of England, deep capital pools, and a navy that could show up almost anywhere turned London into the planet's clearinghouse. Sterling became the currency of settlement, not because someone decreed it, but because markets trusted British contracts, courts, and ships. In the 20th century, the United States took the baton. The foundations were different. Continental scale, mass production, the dollar anchored to deep markets and later to treasury debt. After 1945, Washington sat at the center of an alliance and trade system it helped design. The dollar became the default reserve currency. U.S. universities, labs, and venture capital seeded new technology waves. The pattern repeated. Productivity and innovation first, financial depth second, military reach third, alliances and rules layered on top. Which brings us to today's dynamics. The United States still fields unmatched financial and military capacity, yet the stresses are visible. Growth has cooled from earlier peaks, and the official data show a slowing late in 2024, even as the economy remained resilient. New tariffs and policy uncertainty in 2025 have complicated the global outlook and nudged forecasters toward lower trade growth and more volatility. At the same time, the U.S. innovation engine is humming, especially around AI, chips, and cloud infrastructure. That mix, technological strength with more contested global trade rules, marks a transition phase, not an end state. China sits at the center of the countertrend. After decades of double-digit expansion, it is now growing more slowly but still significantly, hitting its 2024 target amid heavy stimulus and strong manufacturing exports. Its firms dominate segments of clean energy hardware, batteries, and electric vehicles. Its shipyards and ports are world-class. But a deep property downturn, high local government debts, weak consumer confidence, and demographic headwinds weigh on the model. Beijing is trying to rebalance toward productivity, advanced manufacturing, and self-reliance in critical technologies. That push is colliding with export controls, tariffs, and rising geopolitical risk. Europe, still a collection of medium-sized economies rather than a single great power, has re-entered the security business. Defense outlays have surged, and industrial policy is back with a European flavor. Subsidize strategic sectors, secure inputs, tighten screening of inbound capital, and try to keep the single market intact while energy systems decarbonize. Europe's traditional strengths, institutional depth, human capital, and export quality remain considerable. but it is navigating costlier energy, aging populations, and tighter fiscal space, even as it retools supply chains. Meanwhile, a huge structural signal is coming from the global south. India has stepped up its growth trajectory and by 2025 is widely tracked as having overtaken Japan in overall economic size, even if per capita incomes remain far lower. Southeast Asia is building out electronics, cloud services, and logistics. The Gulf is reinvesting hydrocarbon windfalls into renewables, data centers, and diversified portfolios. Africa's coastal economies are chasing manufacturing and services niches as undersea cables and fintech spread. In past cycles, new centers of gravity emerged where capital, labor, and technology combined under relatively predictable rules. That's happening again, just not neatly or all at once. If history rhymes, the rhymes are clear. Rising powers tend to outlearn incumbents in frontier sectors, from Dutch merchant finance to British steam to American semiconductors and software. They scale those sectors through trade routes they can secure. Their currencies become convenient to use. Then the costly parts kick in. Dominant powers accumulate obligations, alliance commitments, open-ended wars, generous welfare states funded by debt. Heavy debt and aging societies make adjustments politically painful. Rivals probe. Supply chains reorganize. A single shock, a financial crisis, a blockade, an energy crunch, arrives at the worst moment. Recent headlines look like the opening pages of a chapter we've seen before. Global military spending hit a record in 2024 with the sharpest annual rise since the end of the Cold War, a sign that security competition is back with a vengeance. Trade routes, the skeleton of the world economy, have shifted as Red Sea insecurity slashed Suez Canal transits through early 2025, forcing detours around the Cape and adding time and cost. Forecasts for world merchandise trade in 2025 have been trimmed to a mild contraction under current tariff settings, a sharp turn from expectations set just a year earlier. And yet, resilience persists. Services trade and parts of goods trade continue to expand, and some economies are still investing aggressively in the next wave of technology. What's different now? Three features make this turn unique. First, nuclear weapons and precision missiles make great power war costlier than in the age of sail, pushing competition into economics, tech standards, cyber, and information spaces. Second, the networked economy magnifies small changes in rules. A tariff here, a new export control there, a temporary shipping disruption, each ripples instantly through inventory systems, commodity prices, and investment plans. Third, demographics and climate constraints are moving from the footnotes into the main plot. Aging in the rich world, shrinking working-age cohorts in China, and climate-related shocks to food and water supplies all narrow the policy room leaders have during downturns. So what does this mean in practical terms? For businesses, assume redundancy beats efficiency. The just-in-time era is giving way to just-in-case. That means more regionalization, friendshoring, nearshoring, and dual sourcing across blocks. Expect procurement teams to map suppliers down to raw materials and logistics choke points. For investors, watch where boring capacity is being rebuilt. Shipyards, ports, rail, grid infrastructure, defense industrial bases, and semiconductor tooling. Many of these assets look cyclical until they become strategic, then they reprice. For governments, the policy playbook is shifting from maximizing trade volumes to managing national resilience. Tariffs and industrial policy are back, but the lesson from history is that productivity, not protection, pays the biggest dividends over time. Countries that get education, immigration, R&D, and permitting right will earn premium valuations. Those that lean only on tariffs risk higher prices with little lasting competitiveness. For citizens, the cycle shows up in daily transactions. Shipping detours can mean higher grocery prices for imported staples. A surge in defense spending can strain local services. When trade slows, export-reliant regions feel it first. Ports, industrial parks, trucking hubs. At the same time, new opportunities materialize. Battery plants in places that never made cars, data centers in cold, energy-abundant towns, maritime jobs where ship repair is being rebuilt. None of this means a simple decline story for any one country. The more accurate picture is relative movement. The United States remains the anchor of the global financial system and the core of the AI stack. China remains the most formidable manufacturing system ever assembled. Europe is pivoting towards security and standards power. India and others are taking larger roles. The system is rebalancing. Where could this go next? The cleanest signal to track is productivity applied to frontier technologies. When a power translates new tech into scaled industries and trusted standards, while keeping its finances credible and its society cohesive, it wins time at the top of the cycle. When a power borrows to cover consumption rather than investment, when it allows its rule of law to politicize, when it can no longer protect sea lanes or enforce contracts, the timer speeds up. The second simple signal is the price of security. If militaries are expanding and shipping is detouring, costs will filter through everything else. In 2024 to 2025, we've seen a record jump in defense outlays and a steep, if uneven, disruption of a vital maritime corridor. That's exactly the kind of structural cost the historical cycles warn about. The bills don't show up all at once, they build in the background, quarter after quarter. And yet, cycles are not destiny. The United States has reinvented itself more than once. So did Britain. So did Japan after 1945 and parts of Europe after the 1970s. Even Spain and the Netherlands, after losing top-tier status, remained prosperous for centuries. In each case, adaptive policy and social cohesion stretched the cycle and softened the fall. Here's the takeaway for this episode. The rise and fall of world powers follow patterns we can recognize. Productivity and institutions lifting a country up, debt and hubris pulling it down, rivals exploiting the opening, and shocks speeding the turn. The signals now: record defense budgets, rerouted sea lanes, tariff-driven trade downgrades, slower but still significant growth in the world's two largest economies, and the emergence of new growth poles, fit the early phase of a rebalancing. The practical response is not doom. It's preparation. Diversify supply lines, invest in skills that travel across borders and sectors, and watch the boring but critical plumbing of the global economy. In the next episode, we'll zoom in on a concrete historical handoff: Spain to the Netherlands. How did a small, waterlogged republic outmaneuver a continental empire? What institutions did the Dutch build that let them finance wars, price risk, and standardize trade at a scale Spain couldn't match? And what does that story suggest for mid-sized powers today trying to compete between giants? That's historical cycle number 1, Spain to the Netherlands. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What signals of this cycle are you noticing where you live? Are prices tied to shipping delays? Is your city seeing new factories, data centers, or defense jobs? Are companies hedging by opening second plants in another country? Drop a comment with what you're seeing on the ground. Your stories help us map the great transition in real time.